It's good.
Woo! What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast. This is your host, Phil, and across from me is your boy,
Josh.
This week, we will be talking about Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Very popular
Super
show
relevant.
for a while on Netflix.
Yeah.
One of Netflix's top tier shows, I would probably say. I haven't watched all of them.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, we'll be discussing that, what we liked about it, what we maybe didn't like about it, and all that jazz, and probably going through a little bit of each of the seasons and just doing a general discussion about things.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
yeah, that's that. But you can check out some writing that we've done. We've got like 4 or 5 up there now. I think I have one that's kind of waiting in the docket.
Yes. I totally accidentally lied to you and said
no,
I was going to get you your feedback
you're
sooner
good.
than
Yeah.
I did. So.
But we've got like 4 or 5 up right now. So go to popculturepunks.com and check those out. You can also click on the merch tab and check out some shirts that Josh has designed for the show, and he's got some other ideas cooking that he'll probably throw up there at some point.
I hope so. I want that one shirt that I have. It's too good.
And otherwise, you can go to the contact form, and if you have any questions, comments, show ideas, anything you want us to talk about, you can send that to us. That'll go right to our email, and yeah, we'll try and work that in. We're right in the phase of planning the next quarter of the year, so now's the time to get those ideas in before we lock things in. So if you got something you want us to talk about or you want to know our opinion on, shoot us a message through the website,
We would appreciate it.
popculturepunks.com.
Yes. All your needs.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
Sick
I don't know if there's any
dealio.
news items, but it's been a little while.
Did you see there's a new Frank Turner album?
I did,
that
yeah, I
came
listened
out.
to it.
So I haven't listened to all of it yet. I listened to the first
It's
song
interesting.
so far.
It's one that he's been working on for a while, because
Interesting.
Be More Kind, before that, he actually planned to do this album. It's like an album about historical women and kind of like going
interesting.
through.
Yeah.
But then he ended up like not being ready for it, so he
Got it.
and he had a lot of other ideas. But now he released this one, and each song is about a different like kind of unknown woman from history, and the song is kind of about their life or some specific thing. And he also has podcast episodes for each one.
That's sweet.
Because I think he was like a history major or something. Like
That's awesome.
He's a pretty big history buff.
Yeah.
So he's got like a podcast episode where he gets on like historians and they kind of talk about these women and stuff. So I haven't listened to the podcast yet, but I've listened to the album. It's pretty good.
Nice.
It's not his best album. It's not one that's indicative of his
Right.
top tier musical style. But it's interesting because he's usually pretty good at writing story songs. So
Yeah.
it is interesting.
because I listen to it's like Ginny Brigham or something.
Ginny Bingham's Ghost.
Yeah,
that one's
yeah,
one
yeah.
of my favorites.
Yeah,
it's
it's like it's fun listening to his style because it reminds me of almost that Devil Went Down to Georgia style where you literally
like
are
folksy.
you're hearing these very very detailed things that are being portrayed, but then the music side of it too. So that's a lot of fun.
and that's kind of how
really
the whole
enjoyed it.
album is, which is fun.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. And I feel like it's cool too that it's I don't want to say multi-genre, but has these different layers to it that kind of get you invested.
Yeah, definitely.
Go on to
I would
that, so
definitely
that's awesome.
recommend it.
Definitely.
So
Cool. Well, I know you usually host, but I'm going to kick off with the first question if that's cool. And it's actually because I've had a sneak peek, and I'm thankful that I did go and start sending you feedback for your next post for the website. But I am really fascinated about the fact that it took you 3 years, because I was looking up the release date, and it was July 15th, 2016 was when season 1 of Stranger Things dropped. And I think since it took Glory and I a long time. I think it almost took us like a year. I think the second season was either just about to come out or had already come out until we found the time to watch it.
Okay.
But I was really interested to hear, like, what took you so long? Like, I know part of it you shared the one time was like the jumps, and you watched like the first little bit and you were like, nope, not about it. But
yeah, I think
what changed?
I mean, what changed was a lot of people started telling me I should watch it, and I kind of hit a lull where I didn't know what show to watch next.
Sure.
Because I had just watched The Boys and a couple other shows where I was kind of coming off of those. Yeah, I think the biggest reason, other than like the fact that it was popular, which you can read more about that in the blog post, but the other reason, the biggest one, was just like the scariness of it. Because I feel like when it first came out, a lot of people talked about it in the same vein as like Stephen King and like It
sure.
and all these things. And I think what they were trying to say was that it was more like It in the sense that it's like a group of like young kids who are kind of like going on an adventure versus like it's really not as scary as It is in any regard. There's some parts, but like for most parts, like you hardly even see like the monsters and stuff in the first season, especially. So I think like we went tubing that one day and Jake was talking about it and you were talking about it a little too.
Yep.
And I had been seeing stuff on YouTube, and so I finally just decided to like sit down, like, all right, I'm just gonna watch the first episode and just get a feel for the show. And then after watching the first episode, like I just kept going.
Because then you watch, I think you texted both of us and you said,
I should look back at that text message and see how like it didn't take me very long to finish the show.
Like I want to see you finish
finished
the
it
first
before
season
you
in a
guys.
day. Yeah.
I finished the entire show before you guys finished it.
Right. And
because I realized I was
caught
texting spoilers to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That'll
like,
be.
I thought you already watched it.
Yeah. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that detail later. But no, because it was funny. Like I actually.
Yeah, August 4th was the day I texted you guys and said 3 episodes in and I'm already in love.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was only 2 weeks, like less than, it was like 2 weeks ago.
So you finished like the whole show in like 2 weeks.
In like a week and a half.
Yeah, a week and a half. Yeah. So yeah, because I know that was something that it took a little bit to get Glory into it because she watched Attack on Titan with me just because it's my favorite thing, and she's like, "Oh, you're my husband. I want to do this with you." So she was all in, and she ended up really loving that. But with this one, it was like, all right, this is going to be a little more. And like by the end of the season, she was just dreading it. She's like, I want to see what happens, but like, I hate this. Like, because it was just getting a little, I feel like season 3 was the spookiest out of
season 3 definitely ramped up the like creepy factor.
Like the gross
like,
factor.
It was dark.
Yeah. Like I think it's, and
by the end of season 3, she was kind of like,
yeah, she was kind of getting like, oh, okay, I love this, but I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. So that's but yeah, I don't know what it is about this show. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, when you think about it, there's something in its character and it's the style and the aesthetic that does feel like it should captivate everybody. But at the same time, I'm kind of baffled that it's as widely popular as it is because I feel like it's a genre, it's a style, and it's a narrative that I don't think is very mainstream at all.
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi show, which is not a mainstream genre.
Right.
Like, masquerading as like wacky 80s thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, that's like the superficial part of it.
Totally.
But like that's not really like the main crux of it. Like,
yeah.
It has the aesthetic of like an 80s thing, but the actual like meat of the show is definitely not the same sort of thing. Yeah. So it's interesting that people are so drawn to it.
Yeah. So from your perspective, getting into it and just diving in and binging the whole show in like a week and a half, what were the aspects, either technically, narratively, what have you, that really latched in and were like, this is awesome, and I dig this? I
think my favorite part, and I think season 1 is my favorite season, because my favorite part was that like the whole season was kind of about grief and about how people deal with like loss and deal with grief and like how that might manifest itself. Except if that was actually real, like, oh yeah, like because if you think about all of like Joyce's, spoilers by the way, like
spoilers going ahead, I'll just put that in the title. So.
But like if you think about how Joyce behaved during season 1, like this show could have been very different if we didn't know that the monsters were real. Yeah. But like we knew from the beginning like something fishy's going on here, so we knew that she wasn't nuts. But like her behavior was like category like you're going insane because you lost your son. Like this is, I feel like they like tied it so well in with like the real world that like the people behaved appropriately, but at the same time like their fears were true, like the conspiracies and the monsters and like the things that we think about. Like it's just an interesting blend of kind of that weird like almost like 80s Cold War feeling of like paranoia and like government secrets and like what if that was actually real? What if they opened up another dimension? And like, I just love how like the characters reacted appropriately to things. And then like when you get different people who believe and don't believe, you get like these very real moments, like Hopper and Joyce especially. Like he's like, okay, I believe you, but like really he doesn't, because she looks nuts. She's got lights hanging all over her house, and she's talking about how he's talking to her through the light. Like it's like it shows you two different perspectives in the show, and you have to kind of like live on that line. And I think that was my favorite part about it that really kept me coming back, just seeing how the characters dealt with these different things. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I feel that one of the reasons I really dug this show, and I think it was one of the things that would have made or broke it for me, was that everyone's really intelligent. Like it takes time for them to solve things and to do things, But overall, even if they don't get the first answer right away, they're asking the right questions and they're not satisfied. And I think that's what makes someone like Joyce one of the best characters throughout the entire show.
And I feel like they're appropriately intelligent.
Exactly.
Like they're not just super scientists, but like they're intelligent enough to know, like, my intuition tells me that something weird is going on, and I've seen this happen. Something weird is going on.
Right.
We're gonna, I don't know how to fix it or solve it, but like I'm motivated to figure this out.
Yeah.
And even like the kids, like they're still kids. They behave like kids. They do dumb things where you're like, you probably shouldn't go off alone or whatever.
Right. When there's like, these potential things that like may or may not exist.
They're chasing after these monsters, but at the same time, like, this is the kind of thing that like kids who play D&D and all these things would want to do, like go on these adventures and stuff. So like all of the characters are like appropriately like intelligent about things and kind of like move towards that goal, it seems.
Definitely. Yeah, and that was I think that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole show is season 1 when Will is like, I don't know what we'd call it, kidnapped, I guess. He's stolen into the Upside Down, and he's communicating through Joyce through the lights, or she can tell that through her house lights that it's him, and he's like moving. And then as soon as Sheila was like getting out the Christmas lights and doing that, it was just like, that's a really creative solution. Like, that's the response. It's not like I can make this generator that like gives me a like isn't some crazy stupid thing. It's like, that's actually that's a good idea. And then it adds in, and like that to me is the genius of the show as it progresses, is then it adds in so that when Hopper comes, we're seeing it from, like you're saying, this dual perspective that we get, as we're seeing it as like Joyce just had like this amazing solution to this very creepy, very weird problem.
Yeah, because we believe her. Like we've seen what she's seen.
Right.
But it's interesting how then they make us like, we know that she's right, but at the same time, like they still put us into Hopper's viewpoints and stuff so well that like we start to question it. Like maybe she is seeing things. I don't know.
Exactly.
Like maybe the show is kind of towing that line. And
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said season 1 is your favorite season. How would you rank all of them together, having seen them so closely?
I think I do 1, 3, 2.
1, 3, 2.
I think 2 to me felt like a bridge between 1 and 2 somehow.
Interesting.
And I just liked that they ramped up the creepiness a little bit more in 3, even though that was my hesitance going in. It was the creepiness. I felt like it added stakes to it, like having them deal with more of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think the story in 1 just felt really tight.
Yeah,
I was
agree.
After finishing 1, I was like, I don't know how they're going to follow this up, because like you can't just do the same thing. Like, kid gets lost. Like, kid gets lost, and friends have to go find him is like an 80s thing. Like there's like paranoia about parents losing their kids and stuff, but like that was kind of like a very succinct, tight story about grief and about loss and hope and like
for sure
and friendship and all this stuff. And I was like, man, that was like a really good story. How are they going to follow this up, like and still be as good?
Totally.
And I liked season 2. I just didn't feel like there's things about season 3 that kind of bugged me, especially having watched them like immediately after each other and not having to wait that 2 years. Yeah. But we can get into that later. But
sure.
Yeah, something about season 2 didn't sit as well with me.
Sure.
Maybe just story-wise.
Yeah.
It felt like it was a bridge between the two almost.
Interesting.
I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I actually would probably say 2, 1, 3. And I think, and this is actually one of the aspects of the show that I think is brilliant and is very fun to experience. And they did it again in season 3, which I was super thankful for. But they have this method of giving characters that you can't stand like the most endearing, heartfelt storylines that you're like, that is my new favorite character. Like, I absolutely love that person. Like, I had no idea that by the end of the season, like of watching all 3, that Erica was going to be one of like my favorite characters. Like Lucas's younger sister, who's just like this like sassy attitude young girl, and how she's just like, these stupid adults drag me around these vents and stuff.
But that
like
was one of those things, like her and Billy and stuff that like they were in season 2, and it felt like they like were just added to like ramp it up to like, oh, now they're important in season, almost like you could tell that they were like adding characters like that to like add into another arc or something, which ended up actually happening. Cause
and I think, and
that doesn't make it bad necessarily. But to me, that's just what it felt like.
I think I enjoyed that, and that's been one of my favorite parts of the show, is because they show you these people that you're like, I would be fascinated to spend the season with them. And I think getting to do that more is fun. Like getting to see And I think even with that, like Steve's progression, like Steve, I think is like one of the best characters in the
Steve's
show.
One of my faves, yeah.
Because
I was afraid they were going to take him down like just like the classic bully route.
Yeah,
like he was
exactly.
just going to be like the main bad guy who's not the monster, and then I'm glad they kind of gave him that.
And again, he becomes one of the most endearing people in the whole show, and you're like, man, this dude is awesome. And like him and Dustin, like when Dustin comes back to the ice cream shop, but then you think back to like season 1 and who he was and where he was at, and you get to see this progression of a person that you wouldn't necessarily experience in a movie or in, potentially other not as well written shows. You see he's a completely different person. Like you almost can't recognize him, and but he's still himself. Like he's this like wisecracking, quick tongued dude who's whatever. But so
I'm trying to remember what happened in season 2. Like I know it was that wasn't the blob monster was season 3, right?
Yes.
Like that creepy, disgusting corpse.
Season 2 was when there was like the hundreds of
the dogs,
demi-dogs.
like the demi-dogs, yeah.
Demi-dogs.
Demi-dogs. That was when he had Dart or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That was season 2.
Season 2 was fun. I really liked season 2. It was just like between the 3, like it wasn't my favorite, but there was a lot of good stuff that happened there.
Definitely.
Too.
Yeah, and I think the reason for me that season 3 or season 1 I think is in the middle because I loved the character progression and seeing some of the changes that were added into season 2. Like I felt like it was a great stepping stone into something that was great. Like it didn't detract from it. Season 1 I think was just such an incredible start to the original idea.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part of me that still has like a weird opinion of child actors and young actors and stuff like that where they don't always sit well with me, but I feel like season 1 was like a great point.
Some of the scenes in like season 1 and season 2, especially in season 2 with Will, I think his name was, like the one that was lost in season 1. Some of the scenes where he's just like in despair and like screaming and crying, like I was like, this kid is talented. Like holy cow. He's like, I like believe that he's like in agony.
Right.
Now.
There's a demon essentially living inside him.
It was their performances were
Definitely.
insane for child actors.
Sure.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
So
season 3 was the last for me, and it wasn't because it wasn't good. I think
I can kind of tell why you might not like it.
Yeah, I think I think for some reason, one of the reasons is I felt like more of the romance stuff became one of the bigger set pieces.
Which makes sense based on their age. But
right. Yeah. It totally does. And I think...
But that's like one of your things.
Exactly. As the subjective critique of me personally, that's just not one of my favorite narrative cruxes that moves stuff.
I like that kind of stuff in shows sometimes. Sure. As long as it's written within like... Because a lot of the relationship conflict actually like played into... how the narrative played out, so I can appreciate it in that sense. But there's a fine line where like you're like, oh gosh, adolescent love.
Yeah, it's just like it's awkward, and maybe what it was too is it felt like there was too much of it, and I guess that was kind of the point. Like Will and some of the other characters are the vocal people being like, okay, who cares?
And I appreciated that about it because like they kind of acknowledged that like this is cringy. But it's also like how kids behave.
Exactly.
And so like Will was kind of like our voice, like stop worrying about relationships. Like the world is literally falling down upon us.
Yeah. Like get with it.
So
definitely.
The thing I appreciated about season 3 was it almost like leaned more into the campiness of the show. Like because it was all of a sudden like commies and Russians and like, I was like, oh, they're finally going down that route.
Right.
And
it's like I kind under a mall, like
I kind of like that. Like they leaned in a little bit to like
Definitely.
the sci-fi campiness of the show.
For sure.
I think I'm echoing a lot of people's thoughts about season 3 with it, but my least favorite part was Hopper. I feel like going straight from season 2 to season 3, I was like taken aback. I was like, what has happened? Like it's been a year and this dude's like out of his mind
angry
now.
Yeah,
like I think it was just purely like because I started season 3 immediately after I finished season 2. So I didn't wait those 2 years or whatever. So to me it was like I'm not used to this. Like, and I think by the end I got kind of used to it, but like I think it was a side of Hopper we hadn't seen before, and I think it's legitimate, but it just felt like weird. Like we didn't get enough. It was almost like the Game of Thrones thing. Like we didn't get enough of that in between to see him become like, because he's talking about like what's his name, Mike.
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like that. He's like he's cussing him out and like
right.
all this stuff like with Joyce, and I'm like, whoa, like holy cow.
Right.
So I don't know. It felt a little jarring to me.
Yeah, I would agree. That was one of the things where I could see it in his character, and it made for very interesting and impactful moments. But I think overall, with so many of the characters who have very specific reasons why they do or behave the way they do, and I feel like with Hopper, he's this weird blend of ambiguity but also tangibility, where we know that he had this traumatic thing with his daughter, I guess, and his first wife, who I don't know if they've ever explained the details of that.
She moved away, and I think his daughter died of cancer.
Right.
But like he keeps talking about her as if she just moved away with, like almost like he's not acknowledging it.
Right.
Or something.
Yeah, and so I think for him to become so irate and I think what would have remedied it quicker is if in the first episode or two, when he's talking with Joyce and he's going over this whole plan and the speech that he's going to give, having like saying verbatim, like, I don't want this to happen. And like, we just close this gate, and like almost acknowledging the prior seasons and being like, I'm seeing this like stupid teenage boy, and he can be just as mad, like this stupid teenage boy coming in, and like, who's to say that he's not going to mess her up, or he's not going to do something that's going to like hurt her heart or whatever.
I think when I think about it, you can make an argument for the way he's behaving, because he does seem like the kind of guy who like would
just
become
stuffs.
unhinged like that.
Yeah.
Because he is kind of like the rough and tough, like cop kind of guy.
Yeah.
And like to see that, he might be losing his other daughter to like he might be losing his new daughter to like this boy now. And the whole thing with Joyce, like, she's trying to move away and all this
stuff. And he
stuff.
alludes to that in the letter at the end of like, the truth is like, I don't want to lose you.
Yeah, and I feel like that
stuff.
letter retroactively added more emotion to it.
Yeah.
But I think initially to me, it was just like, I wasn't ready for this Hopper. Like, I had become so endeared to his character that like, I didn't like him anymore in season 3. I was like, I appreciate your heroism, but your attitude really annoys me now. Like it was just like, he was just overly dramatic about everything. And like, he'd just be yelling at Joyce and like, I don't know. It just felt weird to me, but I still like his character and his willingness to like throw himself into the thick of things. But in season 1 and 2, he still felt a little more calculated, and I agree. Like still made decisions that were rational, and like he felt like more of like a wrecking ball in season 3. Like he was just doing stuff recklessly.
That is a good metaphor for it, because I feel like that was part of it where it didn't sit well with me, and I didn't understand and I think so. Where my critique is coming from, and I'm interested to hear your perspective too, is I feel like we weren't given the evidence as to why in this year span he has become this unhinged. Like, and if we were given evidence, it wasn't
good enough, because the evidence they gave us was that he was just mad that they weren't following his rules.
Right.
So
and
like,
it's like, is that, and it's like,
like,
I'm going to lose
mad.
you again. Right. It's like, well, at the same time, like you don't, the way you're behaving and the way you're acting is not like, I'm annoyed at this stupid teenage boy who is breaking my rules and like, quote unquote, corrupting my daughter. I think like it would have been interesting if he was only that angry around Mike, but then like the rest of the time,
but like
he's like
the
more calculated. The whole calculated. And it's like what you're telling. And I think again, it would have been one of those moments where if we would have gotten a quick snippet of him calling out to like either telling Joyce or telling someone, this is what I'm feeling and this is why I feel this way, I think that would have made it like, okay, this makes sense, and this is why he is this angry.
I think that year span in between there,
they just kind of assumed that we
suggestive, like okay, maybe 11 and Mike have been hanging out way too much, and he's just like lost his mind, like this is too much, and like I could see myself in that situation being like, okay, like you don't need to have this person over every single day, like you're not following my rules anymore, like. And he's the kind of guy who would become that. But I think because they cut that year out, it's like the change is too drastic. Yeah. Like we needed a little bit more, I think. Yeah. For it to feel less jarring. Yeah. I think by the end, I was finally willing to accept his character for who he was. But that's because of what happened to him.
Right, exactly.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think other than that, season 3 to me was really fun.
Yeah,
I loved like the Russian conspiracy stuff.
Yeah,
and, like,
that was a cool
like
addition.
the Russians actually are spying on us. Yeah, and they're like under this mall.
Right,
like,
exactly.
And I liked like they almost like ramped up the 80s-ness of it a little more. Like we got to see the 80s mall and like kind of all this stuff.
That.
And
yeah,
it's funny to think about just because like malls are kind of dying now, but this is like the height of like these new malls and
yeah, like
things.
American consumerism in a way.
Yeah, so
sure.
it's just kind of fun to see a lot of things and kind of experiencing like the very real, like the reality of growing up, and like their D&D group is kind of getting separated based on like differences and relationships and like different interests now, and like Dustin isn't even with them like the whole show. He's with Steve like the whole time.
Yeah.
And I love the Dustin Steve dynamic.
It's
like, those
it's
two
so
are
good.
so awesome
It's
together.
so good. I think Dustin, ever since season 1, is probably my favorite. Like I have his hat, like the hat he has from season 1 in my closet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But he's probably one of my faves. But I'm curious who of the other characters in that bunch or just across the show are some of your favorites.
I think Dustin is. I think Dustin, because he's one of like the ones who's kind of out front. He's like leading the charge, even though Steve's older than him. Like Dustin's kind of the one who's like making the plans and doing things.
Yeah, it
seems, because Steve is just like kind of an idiot. Like,
yeah,
he's like good at protecting people, but he's kind of dumb.
Yeah,
and I actually really liked the switch like from season 2 to 3, because he was still in high school and he was like the cool kid, and he still had kind of his whatever you want to call it, like his popularity,
right?
And they showed a lot of those transitions of like, oh, now he's that kid who couldn't go to college because he was popular, but he was stupid. So like, now he's stuck working at an ice cream store, and like, I appreciated that about his character because it kind of humbled him a little bit. But yeah, I honestly think Dustin is one of them. I like Dustin and Will the most because they're probably for the same reason as you. Like they're the ones who aren't in the relationships.
Yeah,
and like that stuff. It like if I was Dustin and Will in those situations, I would be annoyed. But that whole scene at the end where Dustin finally like talks to that girl, and I was like, oh my gosh,
she's real.
This is hilarious.
Yeah, because I remember that distinctly.
Exactly,
awesome. I distinctly remember the I don't know what the caption coming up of like Utah or whatever, and Gloria was like, what the heck? And I'm like, it's Susie. Like, it's Susie. Susie's real. She's like, oh, no way. So yeah, that
whole
was funny.
Scene was just amazing.
That was
like,
great.
They're like on the brink of getting killed, and they're just singing this song, and I'm like, dang, Dustin's got quite a voice.
Well, and specifically the song that they're singing, like the theme for Neverending Story, which to me is like the most geeky, very under the radar fantasy movie from like the 80s. So I thought that was awesome. But yeah, I would agree Dustin is probably up there. I always really liked Joyce as well.
Oh,
and I think
Joyce is like top tier to me.
Yeah, she's just tops. Like I think she's one of the most fun characters in the whole show because she deals with so many things, and I think seeing her deal with them is like probably one of the most, I don't know, satisfying payoffs in the whole show.
I like how her character changes subtly from season to season.
Yeah.
Because in the first season, she's like just nuts. Like she's distraught over her child being missing, and like she's like supposedly heard him talking to her, and she's like kind of helpless. Like she needs a lot of people's help. And then season 2, I'm like getting season 2 and 3 mixed up because to me they kind of like flow into one another.
2 was when they spend more time at the facility, because the facility in Hawkins like starts actually doing the
because they're helping
thing.
Yeah. And so she kind of like comes into her own a little bit more, and she's like helping Will and all this stuff. But then once you get season 3, like she's like full on, like even more so than Hopper. She's like, no, I am not letting these people take my town again. Like we are taking this down. Like the commies ain't taking us over.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like she kind of like her progression from like being distraught and helpless, and then kind of like, no, like if we're gonna protect this town, like we need to do it ourselves because these people keep screwing us over.
Definitely.
So I love.
Yeah.
And the Winona Ryder is her name.
Yep.
Like she's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like just kills it.
Definitely.
So
yeah, and I think too, to your point with the subtle changes as well, is seeing how she handles the traumas that face her, and
Bob.
how that
was
is probably
heartbroken.
That actually made me more sad, and like I don't think I cried ever during this show, like through all 3 seasons, but that was the moment that was like, oh no, Bob.
That was
like,
the one person
that
in the
was
show
the one
where I was like, this dude is gonna die, and I'm gonna be really sad.
I know,
like
exactly,
because like he just escaped, he just got out, and I was like, they're gonna kill him right now.
Like, you're like waiting.
They're
for
like
it.
standing, and I'm like,
yes,
Bob, run,
Bob,
they can still get through the door.
Exactly.
And the door busts open, and I'm like, no!
And it's like, and it jumps on top of him at first, and you're like, maybe someone will swing an axe.
Choke it,
yeah, maybe
Joyce
he'll
will come
like,
in with the AK. And
yeah, it's like something, and then you're like, and then just right to the jugular, and you're like, oh.
And then they like just hit you in the gut, and they pan right over him. And they're just snacking on his body, and you just see his lifeless face, and you're like, "Why'd you have to do that to us?
Oh,
that was dirty."
You're like, you can't do that. But man, but
he was a champ in that season, though.
I love Bob.
He went from like just kind of like chill computer guy to like, no, I'm going down to that basement and I'm
like,
typing
no,
in
here
that
we
code.
go, here we go.
Yeah.
Dude, Bob is like one of the most underrated. Like, pour one out for Bob. But
Bob is awesome.
I think that whole like. That to me is how relationship stuff in a show can be amazing. And because that to me was something where you have this relationship that Joyce and Bob have, and there's this very real consequence of his death. Like it's not only the fact that these freaky monsters from like wherever come and eat him alive, it's that Joyce has had her own traumas with relationships, and now she finally met this guy who she's like, man, this is the dude. Like,
she's normal.
He's
she
the
get,
best.
Like, you can tell she sees
exactly.
herself moving with him to Maine and like kind of
like
like just living a normal life.
Yeah,
and like he's such a nice dude, and then he just gets mauled to death.
Exactly,
and she has to watch it happen.
Right, and she can't do anything about it. And then for that consequence in the next season to be like, no, like that was the final.
And that does add into like the tumultuousness between her and Hopper.
Yep.
Because like you can tell she's not like, she likes Hopper, but she's not ready to move past Bob yet.
Yep.
And he's kind of a little too forthcoming and like kind of aggressive just because he's like confused about everything. And like,
definitely
it does play into that. But I think because of the whole Bob thing and her son having to go through this twice, I think she's more like, I'm making sure nothing happens in this town again, and if it does, I'm going
out.
in. You don't want to come with me, Hopper, to this like science thing. Like, I'm going by myself. I don't care if there's like a buff Russian dude. Hanging
exactly.
around.
Like, who cares?
And
I'll
Hopper
deal with
gets
him.
A snot beat out of him.
Definitely.
But, yeah.
Cool.
She's definitely her and Dustin are. I think of the kids, Dustin's my favorite. But of the adults, I think Joyce is throughout all three.
Yep.
I really liked Hopper in season 1 and 2.
I agree. Yeah.
So
definitely. And I just really enjoyed. I think I love snappy young characters who like are way too intelligent for their age, and I love like Erica, like when they're at the ice cream stand and they're like trying to convince her like, okay, like you're small enough to fit in this duct, and she's like, here's the thing, like here's how economics works, like I am a commodity, like I am like very important to you. Sounds to me like I am worth more than you're giving me.
I love that part too.
Yeah, so
she's like explaining capitalism
exactly yeah, and she's like, if this is a capitalist thing, so that was I
she's like explaining
her.
To him like, you do realize this is child endangerment, right?
Right, exactly. And then to how she's so convinced that 11 is real, that all these superpower things are real or whatever, but she's like, Lucas isn't a part of this, and she's like, yeah, he is. No, he's not. No.
And Lucas, my brother Lucas,
like my brother Lucas, like no. Like, okay, but you're all in on the girl with superpowers, like, yeah, all in on the Russian invasion, like, totally, we saw it. But your brother, like, no, like this is not possible. So that was fun, and then like just the call out at the end, like her getting the D&D stuff, like that was
like Dustin
fun.
Basically saying like, you're a nerd,
like you're a nerd.
My Little Pony, there's castles and wizards,
exactly.
And knights, like that's nerd stuff.
Yeah,
and they give her the D&D set.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was fun. So I'm curious what your predictions for the next season will be.
The primary reason I wholeheartedly believe that Hopper is not dead.
Because
they didn't show his body at all.
Nope.
They didn't show him get disintegrated.
Nope.
I think the catalyst for next season will be two things. 11 no longer has her powers, so that's going to somehow play into whatever is going on. I think the monsters somehow... You can tell the way they're structuring the shows, like somehow something from last season got its claws into something, and now it trails to the next season. So like... Because of the first season, the Shadow Monster now kind of has a grip on Will. Yeah. And then the third season, the Shadow Monster, like a piece of the Shadow Monster got chopped off and is still in this world. And plus the Russians are doing the same thing here and it's causing chaos. So I think the third season is going to somehow... I think Hopper's going to be in the Upside Down. Like he somehow jumped into the rift to like save himself or something. I don't know how that works. Or he's the American and the Russians got him.
I think he's the American.
Okay. Because they did show a ladder. He could have escaped somehow. But then it also showed when the Americans came into the facility, all the Russians were gone.
That's what I said. I told Gloria, I was like, fascinating that all the Russians disappeared as fast as they did.
Yeah,
because
so I think
where did they go?
They either got Hopper and got out of there, or Hopper somehow like jumped into the Upside Down, and like Joyce is gonna somehow like hear Hopper like trying to talk to her, and she's gonna be like, "Am I going nuts? Like what is happening? Why am I always the one who finds this stuff out?"
Right.
But she moved away, so I think it's gonna have.
Which, if you think about it, though, that could be one of the catalysts to the power of the Upside Down, why the Russians want it, because it seems like it's this reversed world, and so if you can almost use it where if she starts hearing Hopper, if he is in the Upside Down, if there's some kind of interaction with Joyce, and that I could see that being the catalyst of like, oh, you can actually traverse through this thing to get to other places, and if you go out through the portals and stuff, because I think that's the other thing too, is that he was specifically by the gate, so if the gate wasn't fully closed and then he got sucked in somehow before.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced that the only character in the entire show, and to me this is like the subtle tricks of like a writer and like a screenplay, is he is the only character in the entire season 3 that is called the American.
Yeah.
He's referred to as the American like 3 or 4 times. So for them to be like, oh, the American, no.
Yeah,
no,
my
not
only
the
other
American.
thought of who it could be is Papa, because we don't know what happened to him after the facility. Because like the only other thing is like he could be how they figured out how to get this Demogorgon and how to build the gate and stuff.
That's true.
But they never called him the American, but like he is an American. So
well, who is Papa though? I thought he died. Didn't he get eaten by the Demogorgon in
I don't know if they
season
ever
1?
showed what happened to him. I
I
could be
thought
wrong.
he died. I'm pretty sure he did.
Did he?
And I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Email us. Go
But
to the
yeah,
website.
I think no
Let us
matter
know.
what, Hopper's alive, and that's going to somehow
yeah.
play into the next season of like what their kind of goal is, and
Definitely.
then also 11 not having her powers.
That'll be interesting to see what they.
I'm wondering
they
if
bring
that'll
in.
somehow play into like some people are speculating that she's going to be like the bad guy. Like they're going to have to somehow figure out how to like,
Ooh.
like, oh, she's our friend, but now she's like trying to destroy the world or something. Like for some, like the monster has control over her because maybe they didn't get it all the way out of her leg, or I don't know.
Interesting.
Because
Yeah,
like the monster
I don't
had
know.
power over Will after like, even though it had been excised from him,
Right.
like it still somehow had this weird power.
Well, I
So
think
it
it
could
was
be a
still,
similar thing.
I think it was still very much like it didn't. I feel like it didn't have control over him. Like in season 1
No,
to
like,
season
it could
2,
just
like
kind of
it very clear.
see
They were
where
like, "Oh,
he
he's out of the
was.
Upside Down. He's fine." But then it was like, "He's clearly not fine because it's inside of him."
Yeah.
So I feel like
It's kind of like
him-
Sauron from the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like if Will went into the Upside Down, like the shadow monster could like sense him and come to him.
right,
So it's like if Frodo wears the ring, like Sauron can see him.
right.
So maybe now like that thing had like its control over her and like sucked her powers out or somehow is dampening them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the monster's next goal is like, okay, we got rid of her powers. Now we can finally like
Right.
do something.
Right.
I'm afraid it's going to start to become monotonous. Like how many times can this freaking town be attacked by this like power?
Right.
But I have confidence that like they'll figure some way of every time they've figured out some way of making it interesting again. So
Right.
like I think Joyce moving away is going to somehow play a role in that as well, which will be kind of fun to see them get the reunion again, like
Right.
Jonathan and Nancy and the kids
Right.
and their friend. And
Yeah, to be honest, I'm super interested to see what they're going to do, because I feel like with season 2, they clearly left off with a very distinct villain that was still very much alive and a distinct goal that he could still very much have, which is like,
Yeah.
okay, the gate is closed, all these things are dead, but he's still very much around. And to me, that's like, oh, let's see how this happens. And then season 3 is this whole brouhaha of all
I
this
hope they
stuff.
somehow go into like kind of like in the Spider-Man movie, like they kind of explain like the ramifications of the snap in like the high school terms.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
things.
yeah.
I hope they somehow go into like half the town got melted and turned into this rat blob monster. Like what happened to all those people?
Yeah, like,
your
what do you-
town's
what do you
economy
do?
is going to be destroyed because you
Right.
have like half the amount of like none of those people I'm assuming came back.
Right.
So like the monster killed like half your town. Like what's
Right,
gonna
well,
hap-
and,
I
like,
hope
what
they
do you
acknowledge
do?
that somehow, and like it's almost like they're trying to figure out what to do in wake of this like mass like quote unquote like terrorist event sort of.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I think there's a lot of things that they can play with that'll make it
sure.
interesting again.
For sure.
And I'm kind of hoping the Russians are still involved because I liked that aspect of it. It felt more like Cold War-y and like
totally
like conspiracy and stuff.
So how many seasons do you think they need? And I feel like this is a loaded question because we're coming off the Game of Thrones thing that happened not too long ago. How many seasons do you think they need to close out a tight story to make it like a satisfying, this is it? Like this is Stranger Things in the saga of these characters?
I don't know. I think I'm having a hard time seeing what the end game is. I don't know
I would agree.
If they're like giving us enough yet to see what they're working towards.
Mm-hmm.
All we're getting is like these smaller contained stories.
Yeah.
But there's clearly something like eventually this town is going to have to close this gate for good and like rid itself of evil like somehow, or figure out like maybe we're approaching this wrong, maybe we make friends with the Demogorgons and like they like open up the gate and like are friends. I don't know, like
right. Yeah,
I don't know. I think we need at least 2 more seasons.
I would agree.
I don't know if they could close it in one.
Yeah,
I mean they probably could because they've closed the gate every time so far.
Right.
So it's like, at what point did they finally just decide like, okay, nothing escaped this time, like they closed it for real?
Right.
Or like, what will the ramifications of that be?
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, the fact that they closed out with that post mini or like that, that scene at the end with the Demogorgon that they still have. I wonder if they're gonna do something where it's the monster is dead or like the mind flayer is dead, but there's some supernatural force from the Upside Down that is still prevalent, or
the Demogorgon's still alive.
Right.
They showed us in that scene. So like, how the heck did they get that Demogorgon?
Right. The other thing too is, and this was something that I think Zach brought up to me, and he hasn't even watched it. So, is that and specifically they didn't do anything with those other teens with the superpowers from season 2. They never showed up, which to me was kind of surprising.
I didn't like that part about it. Felt like a weird side quest. Like, why is this was pointless? Because she never played a role in anything else.
But maybe that's where season 4 is like, okay,
she needs to go back and figure out how to get her powers back.
Exactly. So
or she needs to find Papa. To like, I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of things that could go certain ways depending on.
Definitely.
I kind of hope we get more of that because that was like the whole first. In my mind, like the first season was like, I'm kind of trying. I want to know about these experiments and how they got 11 to get these powers.
Yeah,
and maybe that is something they're subtly working towards.
Right,
and that's part of Elle's character redemption.
Definitely
part of it.
Yeah,
but I think part of her character is like it doesn't matter how you got your powers. Like what matters is what you're doing with your powers.
Yeah, so I'm pretty convinced by the fact that she tore the thing out of her leg and whatever, and I think it's interesting that they didn't ever explain how or even allude to how her powers disappeared. They just kind of did. Like the thing was in her leg and then they were gone once she ripped it out.
Yeah.
So
and that little thing technically just like ran away. Like they specifically panned to it as they threw it and then it just like skittered off screen.
And then
so
Hopper stepped on it.
Oh, did
he? Hopper steps on it. And then I thought it was also interesting that very distinctly when the body mind flare thing comes in, there's a specific shot where it's walking in and it actually steps right next to it and that little sludge thing crawls into it.
Oh.
So I think it's dead. I think it's dead. At least that giant blob thing.
What if somehow somebody else gets 11's powers?
Ooh. That's possible.
I don't know how yet, like, but we don't really fully get what the Upside Down is still. Like,
right.
We know it's like an inverse of the city. We know it's like decrepit, but we don't know like why. Like, why does this thing want to take over Earth and like our dimension? And
what if season 4 is all the kids going through the Upside Down to Russia to rescue Hopper from like the Gulag?
I feel like
that would be
somehow
tight.
Rescuing Hopper is going to play a role in something, and somebody's gonna. I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And maybe the Russians somehow have access to the Upside Down because they have that Demogorgon.
Exactly.
So maybe they're putting him in there.
Right.
Like he's kind of their test subject.
Yeah.
What if Hopper gets powers? I don't know.
Dude, that'd be gnarly.
I think there's a lot of things that can happen, but I don't know what's going to resolve the show.
Yep, I agree.
Because there's not really a larger arc.
Yeah.
I think the show just ends when the monsters finally stop trying to destroy the town.
Yeah.
And I think they can kind of decide to end that when they want to, as long as they can keep coming up with interesting ways that they keep somehow coming back. And
right.
So,
and I think it's interesting that it feels like they put a distinct lid on the Mind Flayer itself. So now I feel like
you can't bring the Mind Flayer back a third time.
I don't think so. No. I don't think you do that. But it'd be interesting if now the Upside Down, because I could see there still being the monster aspect if they're like, okay, now we have to travel to Russia through this like other metaphysical plane.
Yeah.
And if they do that, that could be a cool romp, is like seeing them all in this, because then I feel like that builds into the character of this whole world that we've been missing out on the past 2 seasons, where we got, I feel like, pretty detailed glimpses of it in season 1, but I feel like season 2 there really wasn't a major dive other than like Will kind of like standing in this open field.
Yeah, it kind of just
things.
Seems run down.
Yeah.
Like, empty and run down. Like,
right.
Why are these things here and what is it? And
right.
Maybe we'll get more of that in season 4.
Yeah.
I think that's that needs to be at some point. We need some more exposition or something about like why, like where do these powers come from and how does that relate to the Upside Down? And I feel like they're going to somehow explore that.
Definitely.
At least for resolution in the show, I think we need to know more about what's going on.
I would agree.
For us to feel like resolved. So hopefully we get more in the next season.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good one.
I agree.
I'm excited.
I think, to be honest, though, I'm a little nervous of burnout depending on what they do. Like, all of a sudden, it was like, oh my gosh, what if they spent the whole season or like, 80% of the season in the Upside Down? Like, that got me excited of like, we haven't been there yet. And I feel like I'm nervous if they start repeating, and I don't think they will, because I feel like even the Mind Flayer coming back this time, every major villain or thing that has happened in all the seasons has been an evolution on something that is like, oh, frick, like that is a big deal. Like now you have this giant flesh blob, the Thing style monster like busting through the mall. Like that is not a like, oh, I guess we'll just light it on fire. Like there's not an easy solution for that. So what are they going to do to get out of that? And I feel like if they were to do a narrative arc or a storyline that feels too similar to the other ones, not necessarily maybe in the content or like the very boiled down details of like, oh, we're going to rescue somebody, but if they do it again where it's like mysterious thing starts contacting Joyce, mysterious thing gives this person superpowers, I think it'll start to feel old, where it's like now we're just kind of getting into
I think
the repeat.
I think based on what we've gotten so far, they seem to be pretty well in tune.
I would agree
with how to.
I would agree. Yeah,
how to disperse characters appropriately, because even if you look at season 1, it's a very clear like group of friends adventure, trying to find their friend, and then the rest of the world also like kind of trying to, but also like most people don't believe that this stuff is real. And then as soon as you get in season 2, like it could have been easy just to have another group of friends tries to solve mystery.
Yeah.
But like they didn't really do that, and the friends were kind of split up and gone in different ways, and just kind of naturally, even like almost like a Infinity War sort of thing. Like, picking and choosing who gets to work with who. And then in season 3, expanding even more on that, where like Dustin doesn't even hang out with his friends until the very climax of the story. Like then all of these 3 storylines that have been happening in conjunction with each other all converge and kind of come together.
Right.
And it seems like they have a pretty good idea of what makes a good narrative, as opposed to like what would be an interesting Stranger Things thing. Like what do people want to see? And I think the default is people want to see these 4 friends like going on adventures. Yeah. But I think they haven't necessarily been giving us that. Like
they've been doing what's best for the story.
They've been doing what's best for the story itself.
I'd agree.
And I think it's worked really well.
For sure.
And I'm confident that they have good plans up their sleeve.
Definitely.
And there's even been pictures of Eleven's like actress, Millie or whatever, with David Harbour, and he's got like this really scraggly beard. So like people are like, is he preparing to like be locked up in this cage, and like he comes out and he's got this gnarly beard, or like he's been in the Upside Down and he's like this grizzly like old man Logan character. He's like,
dude, that'd
got
be
like
tight.
the corpse of a Demigorgon into a jacket.
That would be so ballin'.
So like I don't know, it's interesting to think about. So I think it's going to be good. And I'm confident we get at least one more like solid season. I'm hoping it never tapers off and it kills it in the wrap up whenever they decide to wrap it up. But
cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's kind of Netflix's star show, so the temptation might be there to kind of keep it going and not end it on a good note. But
for sure,
I get the sense that the writers know how to like end things.
Yeah, and I'm reading, and granted it's Wikipedia, but I'm sure there's specific quotes from the Duffer Brothers. But I'm seeing on Google that the Duffer Brothers have said that Stranger Things is likely to end after its 4th or 5th season.
Oh, so we could get an ending.
So I think, well, I think I knew from the very beginning that they had a distinct story that they were trying to tell, and that once it was done, it was done. And to be honest, like, I'm really ecstatic about that, because I think so many of the things that we have just turn into cash cows depending on who owns it, and it goes on forever unnecessarily in a way that doesn't. It just hinders the quality.
It basically becomes just entertainment versus like this like thing that will stand the test of time.
Exactly. And I think,
which isn't necessarily bad, but it's annoying.
Oh yeah,
it's like something you appreciate and enjoy, and you see it kind of become a poor version.
Yeah,
of its
it just
self.
becomes watered down, and it isn't as unique. And so I think if this ends on a distinct conclusion, which it sounds like this is what they are wanting, is like a very distinct. This is how this is going down.
It's going to be interesting because, like I said before, I'm having a hard time seeing what the end they're working towards is.
Yeah.
But
So for one to two
I'm hoping it's
seasons
one
to
of
be
those
the
things
end.
where when it ends, you're just like, oh, like they've been building towards this the whole time. Like,
yeah, and you never.
And
knew.
then it's like one of those things where when you know the end, then the whole show becomes even better because like you notice things and see things, and maybe Hopper's attitude makes a little more sense, or like these these things that feel a little bit weird make sense when you find out like what the heck is actually happening. Like, what is the Upside Down? Why did they have powers? Like, why were these scientists trying to do this in the first place? And
for sure.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting things that could come out of the next couple seasons.
Yeah.
If they go to 5.
Definitely.
So I think I could see him ending it in 5.
I think 5 is.
I'd be satisfied
in
with
my
that.
in my mind. 5 I think is a good number. Like it's tangible. It's enough time to build out maybe one more storyline where if they rescue Hopper, if that's what the storyline is, or they go and they figure something out big and they have to solve that. But then 5 is like the final battle of like, okay, we're going to end this.
Yeah.
So, because
what
seems.
time was this show in? Was the 3rd season in 84?
I think it was, maybe. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure.
I'm kind of hoping they get to the 90s, but I don't think they will.
Dude, that would be gnarly.
I guess the ethos of the show is supposed to be like the 80s. It'd feel jarring probably to get to the 90s.
But that could be interesting, is if they get to a later part of the 80s, and then it's like maybe at the end of the Cold War, like maybe that's what they're shooting for this whole time, is they're kind of starting when the Cold War was kind of ramping up, and then it ends when the Cold War kind of closed.
At some point, I don't know how they're going to deal with these kids sprouting up, because they're going to keep getting taller probably for the next 2 years, because they already got pretty dang tall between season 2 and 3. Like, I was surprised. I was like, dang, like, these kids are getting big.
They're getting old.
I feel like it's going to get even worse if they wait another 2 years for season 4.
I think you just narratively say something of like,
I mean, it's not that hard to, because they just skipped ahead a year. But I even saw it for It Chapter 2, like, they have to, like, CGI the kids for, like, the flashback scenes into, like, smaller versions of themselves.
That's funny.
Because, like, the kids are all too tall now.
Yeah.
So...
yeah. Oh, that's
even like a Shazam sequel. Like, how are they going to do that? So.
Right, man, dude. Time sensitive stuff is just so hard, and
especially with kids. Yeah. But I'm excited for the future of the show, and I'm definitely glad that I made the jump and watched it and persevered past the scary stuff, because there is some scary stuff. Like, there is some stuff where you're ugh.
Like, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's a really good show.
I agree. Right on. Cool.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I think that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this kind of all over the thing. We were just kind of like, let's just talk about this.
Chat,
It's recent, and I was stoked that you finally finished it and caught up and jumped on the bandwagon officially. But as a reminder, all your Pop Culture Punks needs are on popculturepunks.com. There's links to our merch tab to help support the show. There's some blogs that Phil and I have been writing about, just thinking about pop culture and ways that it affects us, and fun things that we've been thinking about. Currently, there's 4 posts up there right now. The most recent 2 by Phil and I are about music. Phil about country, me about punk music. So if you're interested in checking those out, definitely head to popculturepunks.com/writing. And they actually give you like a read limit, an estimated read limit, which is actually pretty cool. Yeah. So both of those are like 5 minutes or less. So it's a very quick breeze. Doesn't take long. Give us a like. Shoot us any suggestions for future blog articles that you'd like us to read at popculturepunks.com/contact. And otherwise, all the other tabs have our upcoming schedule of all the different things that we'll be talking about over the next few weeks. And yeah, that's it.
That's all she wrote.
But until the next episode, which will be difficulty in video games, we bid you a fond cowabunga.
Ooh, yeah.
Job security, but I've been dreaming about packing it all up, cause the war in me just won't relent till there's nothing left but dust. So what do you do when the walls start closing in, and everyone you love tells you it's all just in your head?